You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. And on today's episode, we're reviewing the fourth Ashes Test between Australia and England. For the first time this Ashes series, England have recorded their first victory of the series. And for the first time since 2010-11, they have finally broken their Test victory drought in Australia. And for the first time this Ashes series, they played well. But it's all little too late as the series has already been wrapped up and decided. But I suppose they've got something out of this tour, as Ben Stokes was talking about ahead of this fourth Ashes Test. We needed to get something out of the last two Test matches. They certainly did that. They recorded their first victory, but it's all a little too late as the series is already gone. For Australia, well, you can say they weren't at their best in this Test match, but you can't blame them for a bit of complacency, maybe a bit of Ashes hangover. The series was already wrapped up in Adelaide. So you can't blame them for being a bit sluggish in this fourth Test because the Ashes were already wrapped up. But quite simply, the batting wasn't good enough on a very tricky surface at the MCG. And they put in some good bowling performances in the first innings, but the second innings, England were able to chase down the runs in the end. And for the second time this Ashes series, we've had another two-day test. And the MCG pitch was at the centre of some controversy and definitely was the main talking point following the aftermath of this very shortened Boxing Day test, which everyone looked forward to. Unfortunately, only lasted for 2 days and got an unsatisfactory rating from the ICC, which is probably a true reflection of actually how the pitch played. But maybe both sides were to blame in terms of their batting and not adapting. But we'll talk about that a bit later on in this match review. But joining me to dissect, discuss and unpack this fourth Ashes Test is good friend of the podcast and Australian cricket fan, Jihan. Jihan, welcome.
Thanks a lot, Jack, for having me on again. A little bit disappointed after the last Test match, but happy to go through it and dissect where things went wrong for Australia.
Yes. But won't be a long episode. It only went for 2 days. So we're not going to talk about much because there wasn't much cricket to speak of over the 2 days. It went very quick, just like it did in Perth, which seemed like an eternity ago. It was a month or so ago, that first test. And now this Boxing Day test, another 2-day test. Plenty to talk about and discuss, as you've mentioned, Jihan. So without further ado, let's do that and talk about how this fourth Ashes Test went down. But first of all, let's have a look back at the match summary and reacquaint ourselves with how this game panned out in terms of the scores. Australia batted first, made 152, which was a good effort on this tricky surface at the MCG. Michael Nessa top scored with 35, and Josh Tongue took 5 wickets. He bowled pretty well in the first innings. England, in reply in their first innings, were bowled out for 110. It wasn't a great batting display from them. Harry Brook top scored with 41. Michael Nessa was outstanding with the ball, taking 4 wickets. And Australia in their second innings were bowled out for 132. Travis Head top scored with 46. Bryden Cass, he's had a bit of a difficult series, but he picked up 4 wickets for England in that second innings. And then England in their second innings needed 175 to win. They chased them down. In the end, I wouldn't say clinical, but they got the job done. They finished on 6 for 178. England won by 4 wickets, and not a surprise to see Josh Tongue named player of the match because of his 5 wickets in the first innings, and he also bowled well in the second innings. Not a surprise, as England recorded their first victory in Australia since 2010-11. So that's pretty much what happened over the 2 days of this fourth Ashes Test at the MCG. As I said, 5 days of cricket crammed into 2 days. So it was action-packed and it was fast-forward from the get-go. Now, what were the key moments and key factors? Well, basically, there was one key moment and deciding factor, and that was England winning the toss. In the end, it was a pretty good toss to win. as it often does in these sort of types of pitches where they're a bit lively and then they settle down, and they often favour the side batting second. And we've seen that in this series thus far. We saw that in Perth with Australia just chasing over 200 and Travis Head doing what he was doing there. And obviously England here got the better batting conditions towards the end of the test match as the pitch started to flatten out and Australia struggled to take wickets and the pitch wasn't doing as much. So I would say winning the toss was pivotal for England. And, and their bowling performance was also key as well in both innings to bowl Australia out cheaply in both innings to win their first test of this series. But you will have to say the toss was the deciding factor. Now then, Jihan, let's talk about Australia's performance in this fourth Ashes test. First loss of the series, and obviously Australia haven't lost to England in an Ashes series in Australia since 2010-11. That was at the MCG in that series. So it's been a long time. It's been 16 years as we record this episode. Is now 2026. So it's been a long time. But I suppose a bit of complacency from Australia winning the Ashes in Adelaide. That's understandable. They weren't at their best with the batting side of things. Both innings were pretty ordinary batting displays. The bowling was pretty good in the first innings and then struggled in the second innings because the pitch got better in England. Sort of played baseball. They were aggressive, but they were able to put pressure on Australia in that second innings. So just a bit of a recap. Australia 152 in the first innings. They scored with the bat. It was a good effort after losing the toss and being sent in. They were able to muster up that 150 score, mainly through Michael Nessa, really, and his contribution, and then Khawaja and Carey chipped in with some scores there in that first innings. And then going into the second innings, I had a 42-run lead, which proved to be critical in this test match because of the nature of the surface and how this test match was going. But just like in the first innings, their batting struggled in the second innings. They only set England 175 to win. That wasn't enough in the end. And you have to say some poor shot selection and a little bit from the pitch, but mainly poor shot selection from a few batters in both innings cost Australia there. And their bowling performance, well, the first innings, they bowled really well. 110, they dismissed England in the first innings, which was a very good effort, which helped them get a 42-run lead. And that was mainly through Michael Nessa, who led the way with 4 wickets there. And then obviously Scott Boland did his thing. He chipped in with a few wickets. And then Mitchell Starc, and then Cameron Green got a wicket. Jai Richardson didn't get a wicket, but he bowled very well on his test return. And then in the second innings, England sort of played aggressively. I wouldn't quite say it was baseball, Jihan, because I think that was already gone in Brisbane and probably even gone in Adelaide. But they were aggressive, and it wasn't pretty, but they were able to get the job done. And Australia struggled to take wickets. The pitch wasn't doing as much as it did on day one. And you could say that the pitch flattened out after being lively on the first day of this fourth Ashes test. So, Jihan, your overall thoughts on Australia? What are your thoughts from Australia in this game? How would you assess their batting, first of all, and then their bowling performance?
Yeah, I mean, the reason they lost this game was their batting was pretty poor. I would say it was close to terrible, really. Particularly in the second innings, I think, when things were starting to get a bit easier in terms of the pitch settling down. But yeah, the overall the batting was really poor. The bowling was really good in the first innings. I think in the second innings, when things got a bit easier, England's kind of baseball style, I suppose, when they know they're only chasing a relatively small total in the fourth innings, they were able to just, I suppose, play a bit of a T20 ODI type of game, and yeah, they managed to pull it off. So I think, I mean, and I actually felt a little bit also in that fourth innings that when Ben Duckett and Zach Crawley came at the Australian bowlers for the first time they started to lose their lines and lengths a little bit, particularly Mitchell Stark. They did have a lot of luck. Having said that, I remember there was a Corton bowled, which Stark, I think he dropped it, but only just off a one-handed catch off of Ben Duckett. So they chanced their arm. They had a fair bit of luck, but I suppose
yes, there was also an LBW appeal was reviewed and was not overturned, I think, as well.
Right.
I think it was Ben Duckett, I think. Which wasn't overturned. So they did have a bit of luck, as you said.
Yeah, but they just didn't have enough runs on the board. I think if they had to chase 250, Australia would have definitely won the match, because there's still a little bit in the wicket for them. I thought that once the wicket started getting, once that lavish movement wasn't as much in the fourth innings, Michael Nessa looked a bit innocuous. The keeper standing up.
Yes, you've got to bear in mind it's the first red ball test he's played, because the previous test matches he's played are day-nighters. So you've got to bear that in mind with Michael Nessa. But he bowled well in the first inning, but struggled in the second.
Yeah. Well, when there was movement on offer, he bowled well in the first innings. But once the ball wasn't doing anything, England, I guess, just sort of treated him like a medium pacer, and that got Zach Crawley going. England have this theory, it's one of those baseball things, it's probably nonsense, but they reckon that if you hit the ball for 6 and it gets and the ball hits concrete, then it stops the ball from moving for the rest of the innings. So they reckon that's something that
especially with the advertising screens on the fence. The LED lights are quite sharp, and when the ball hits them, it takes a lot of chunks out of them.
Yeah.
So there's probably some theory to the madness, but it makes sense, you know.
So whether that happened or not, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I thought the ball stopped seaming in that fourth innings, even before they started attacking. It stopped seaming excessively anyway compared to the first day.
Yeah, it did die down quite a bit.
Yeah. But overall, the reason Australia lost this match was because their batting was very poor. And I have to say that the pitch was substandard, wasn't good enough for Test cricket, but it was by no means unplayable.
No.
It was. It was a little bit too paced, and the problem was that it had excessive seam movement, and that was the biggest issue.
And a lot of grass, 10 millimeters, and that makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, a lot of grass, and also like sort of thatchy, uneven kind of uneven type of grass, and that's what causes the unevenness of pace and bounce, different balls coming up at different paces, bouncing excessively randomly. But I think more than that, it was mostly the excessive seam movement that was the problem. And I don't care how good your technique is, but playing excessive balls that are seaming excessively and at pace, when it sort of feels like the ball's gaining pace off the wicket. I know scientifically that's impossible, but that's what it feels like, because when you're playing the ball, it's supposed to slow down after pitching, but doesn't slow down that much, because it just seems to. It feels like it picks up pace, and with that deviation, what I compare it to is this, almost as if you're facing Matthias Muralitharan or Shane Warne bowling off spin or leg spin, but it's at 80 or 90 miles an hour as opposed to 50 or 60 miles an hour. So it's almost, when you get those balls that are seeming excessively at pace, it's almost impossible to play.
It's sort of like spinning tracks, really, in the subcontinent. You know, rank turners, it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it? And that's what we saw throughout this test match to an extent.
But the thing is that it does, when you get pitches like that, generally it does get better as the pitch loses its moisture. But I think the problem here was that was taking a long time in this test match because the first 2 days were really cold. It was like 16 degrees on both days.
Yes, very unsummer-like in Melbourne. But not a surprise. It's Melbourne. There's 4 seasons in one day, apparently. So
yeah, that's
not
true.
a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I thought England got bowled out for 110 in the first innings, but I thought most of their dismissals were from just, really difficult bowling, good bowling and excessive.
More shot selection as well.
Some of it was, but I think a lot of it was the excessive seam movement. And more so than I thought Australia's dismissals were. I mean, if you... there were 3. I remember 3 in particular when Scott Boland broke the partnership that was going well with Harry Brook. That ball that got him LBW, that seemed in like a fast off spinner. It was, you can't really play that. And then same with Jamie Smith, came in like a fast Murali type off break. And Will Jacks got a similar ball, and that one bounced as well, and that bounced excessively and was hard to get, hard to defend really. So I thought England got a lot more unplayable, difficult balls, and it goes to show that Australia's bowling attack is a lot more potent generally. The problem is they just haven't got enough runs on the board in this.
Yeah,
this test.
That's plain and simple, isn't it? Just not enough in the end. If they had 200 plus, maybe that could have been enough given what we saw from England in the first innings. But, they, as you said earlier, Jihan, they treated it like a T20 match, basically. And it wasn't pretty, but I think that was the best way of attack on this sort of wicket. Otherwise, you're going to get a ball with your name on it. But people talk about the pitch and that, with all the things you've just raised there. But there was some pretty ordinary batting on both sides. We'll talk about England in a minute, but on Australia's side, there was some really poor shots. I'm talking Cameron Green ran himself out in the first innings. That wasn't really the pitcher's fault, wasn't it? It was just a judgment of run. He was batting well with Michael Nessa. They put on 50 and it was looking good. Ran himself out. And then in the second innings, I don't know what he was trying to do. Premeditated a ball, sort of stuttering in a way, really. He went forward once and then he went forward again and it got big on him from Stokes and he edged it. Bit of a scramble mind there for Cameron Green. Hasn't had a great series.
And that was when they were putting on a decent partnership and the pitch was starting to flatten out.
Yes. And he was out there with Steve Smith and,
he got out at exactly the wrong time, which was...
Yes. That partnership was 31 for the 7th wicket between him and Smith, looking good, and then he does that, which he didn't need to do. If he played that from the crease, it could have been a lot different. But it just shows where he's at the moment in this series with his batting mindset. Usman Khawaja, the pull shot in the second innings was not the pitcher's fault. That was just him not expecting a short ball and didn't play it well. Alex Carey in the first innings fell to a leg side trap, which happened in Adelaide to Ben Stokes, where he gloved it in the second innings. The plan worked again here in Melbourne. That wasn't the pitcher's fault.
That was a leg stump half volley, pretty much.
Yes. So that wasn't the pitcher's fault. Travis Head in the first innings chopped on, but he got a good ball in the second innings from Braden Cast. So that was a good ball. Marnus sort of in that in-between sort of thing where he fends at the ball and not moving off the crease. That wasn't really the pitcher's fault, really. It was just Marnus just struggling there. The tail enders, you can't complain about their dismissals because it's not their job. But really, Jake Weatherald struggled as well. And Steve Smith in the first innings got a good ball, but I thought he did well to stick it out in the second innings, 24 not out.
Well, I mean, he was batting well in the second innings. If him and Green could have pushed that partnership on a little bit longer, they could have set up a total that they could defend.
You did see if you prepared to spend some time on this surface, runs were there to be scored, and we saw some very good shots played from both sides at times. But as it is in the modern era, with T20 cricket and batting techniques, and that's been discussed following this fallout of this Test match, Jihan, maybe the players made the pitch look bad than it was. And once you see movement and seam movement, it spreads like wildfire.
I think the
You come in
Australian
and then you expect things to happen quickly, and then it's just a roll-on effect, and then batting collapses happen. And we saw that from Australia and England in this Test match.
Yeah.
So
I think
there's a
the
bit
Australian.
of sorry to cut you off there, Jihan, but
No,
there was a bit of both of technique, but also mindset, and not willing to show that mental resilience. And if Australia did that and pushed that score up to 200 in the second innings for a target for England to chase, they would have won potentially. But they didn't in the end, and obviously it's because of their batting. It's sort of like what happened to England in Perth in that second innings, Jihan, when they were 1 for 100. Sort of the same thing happened to Australia here, but a different set of circumstances.
They were well ahead at that point on day two. I mean, when you get bowled out for 150, you're not really confident of the position you're in. But then to go on to bowl out England for 110, and let's not forget they were like 80 for 8 or 80 for 9 as well.
Well, they were 9 for 91.
There you go, not 91 for 9. Yeah.
Well, they were 4 for 16 at one stage, and then 9 for 91.
Yeah.
So they could have been bowled out for 100, but they were able to scramble a few more runs to get to 110.
Yeah. You get bowled out for 150, and you still manage to get a lead of 40. That's Christmas come early.
Especially on this type of wicket as well. Yeah. It's very crucial. Any runs are like gold, especially a first innings lead like that. But that's always a precarious sort of thing, the third innings of a Test match, and we saw it.
You can't
go either one or two ways, and it went the bad way for Australia.
Yeah, you can't give up that advantage, and the thing is, they just I mean, it's a horrible collapse in that third innings. And some of the guys like Khawaja looked good in the first innings. He didn't look too troubled. He played and missed a few times, sure, but you're going to play and miss on this kind of pitch.
Yeah.
Steve Smith looked good in the second innings. Travis Head.
Michael Nessa in the first innings batted well, and he's
Michael Nessa's like driving on the outside off stump a number of times to get boundaries.
And he was scoring runs at will. And then obviously, as you mentioned, Travis Head batted well in the second innings until he...
Head was looking good in the second innings. They talk about balls with your name on them, but I don't think there was too many of those. Head in the second innings, Khawaja in the first. That's all I can think of, really.
Yes.
The rest was just all poor shot selection and some of it poor batting technique.
Or in the case of Cameron Green, poor judgment of run in the first innings. In the first innings there, that wasn't the pitcher's fault. But you have to say it was pretty ordinary batting.
I could kind of, after Adelaide, I kind of thought this might happen because when they were trying to set England a target in the fourth innings, when they were well ahead, out of nowhere they lost 6 for 38, and they're all getting out to similar kind of dismissals. And bear in mind that's on a really flat pitch. They lost 6 for 38 there, and then when you look at it, the guys that have scored the only guys that have scored big runs in the series are Head and Carey, with a little bit of help from Khawaja in Adelaide, and Stark down the order. And no one else has really done much. So
that's very true. Yeah.
But yeah, I think frustrating thing for me with Marnus in particular is he just keeps getting out the same way. And I look back at the 2023 Ashes, and he was getting out exactly that same way. That was to Broad, to Mark Wood, to Wokes, to Ollie Robinson. So there's a technical issue there which he needs to correct. I mean, you can't just keep coming and getting out the same way, because what happens is bowlers learn. They learn where to bowl at him and how to get him out. So
yeah. Well, I think Andrew McDonald did say a few things after this Test match about Marnus, and saying that we've talked to Marnus to show a bit more intent. And he did that in early on in this series. He showed good intent and he looked pretty good. I think it was in Brisbane, if my memory serves me correctly, when he got that.
Well, he got 60 odd in Brisbane. He got 50 in Perth.
Yeah. He looked pretty good in Perth, and he looked pretty good in Brisbane with that intent. And then in Adelaide, it sort of fell away a bit, and then here in Melbourne. So let's hope for him he can rectify that in the last test in Sydney. But you can understand for the drop-off, Jihan, because, the intensity levels are dropped off because the series is done. Australia wrapped up the Ashes in Adelaide, which is sort of reminiscent of the Australian teams of yesteryear, Jihan, in Ashes series. They usually drop off after they won the first three because the series was already done. So this Australian team is not the only one to do that. There are other Australian teams who have done that. Even the team back in 2002-03 lost that last test in Sydney. So, and they won the series 4-1. So could be a similar thing here with Australia. They could win 4-1 like they did 20 odd years ago, but not a surprise here. But they'll be hoping to put in a better performance in Sydney with the bat mainly. The bowling is good. They just didn't have enough runs to play with in the second innings. The first innings was good. They used the conditions well. Just not enough runs in the second innings to defend, really. So that's pretty much the story, really. So any final remarks, Jihan, before we move on and talk about England's performance?
Yeah, I mean, just with the batting, there are a few technical issues there, but I think most of the problem is with shot selection, and then also not being once the wicket's doing a fair bit, they seem to fret a little bit about if a ball's going to get them out, and then also if they're denied scoring opportunities, and if they're not hitting the ball in the middle of the bat frequently enough. As soon as that happens, then they almost start, I don't know, they sort of start batting like they could get out at any moment, and it doesn't really take a good ball to get them out a lot of the time as well.
Yes.
First innings, Marnus and Smith, they just eyes lit up when they saw what they thought was a half volley, and they get out to that. So yeah, I think it's more about shot selection and pace of trying to pace your innings, because I feel like if they're not getting enough boundaries, if they're not feeling the ball on the middle of the bat, then that's when they start fretting a little bit, and that's when all the poor shots come out. Michael Clarke said something like, "Oh, when you look at the dismissals in isolation, you don't. It looks like really poor batting, but you don't see all the balls that came before it." And he was trying to say that they're almost getting set up like few in swingers, and then they go for the outswing. But I don't buy that, to be honest. The England bowling was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't amazing.
No, probably you have to say Josh Tongue was the best, and
it wasn't Wasim Akram bowling 3 in swingers followed by an outswinger and getting the end. No, it wasn't like that. They were bowling full. They were bowling full and consistent line and length.
For the first time this series.
This is the thing. And I was going to say, all it took was a bit of grass on the wicket for them to be able to do that. Up until then, it's almost like they were
the most English type conditions you would have wanted.
Yeah,
they had them there in Melbourne, and they used them well.
Yeah,
fair play to them.
Yeah, no, it was almost like they were scared to pitch the ball up when they were bowling on decent wickets. But yeah, I think Australia, the batsmen, they just like some of them are. I mean, technically some of them are good, but they just need to be able to work out
more
how
resilience and just
work out how to pace their innings. And there's a couple of them. There are technical errors, issues that need to be addressed and need to be corrected. What's frustrating is when you see the same technical issue over and over again for the last few years. You feel like a batting coach needs to get in there and tell Marnus, work out how you're going to play those balls.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what you get paid for, I suppose, as batting coach. But they're all professionals, and they'll do some reflection and deep dive in soul searching and hopefully improve for Sydney, which would be different conditions again. So, you can understand for Australia's performance. They've played some good cricket up until this test here in Melbourne, obviously, and they've wrapped up the Ashes and they've won the series. So you can understand for a bit of a drop-off and complacency. which we saw in this test match from Australia. So that's Australia. Let's move on, Jihan, and talk about England. And for the first time since 2010-11, they won a test in Australia. Who would have thought? I think it was 5,400 odd days or something like that since the last test they won in Sydney in 2011. So it's been a long time between drinks. But you have to say, they did pretty. I wouldn't say it was an outstanding performance because they were still sketchy and they still had their problems with both bat and ball as they've had throughout this series. But they did enough in terms of their own skill set and level on this type of wicket to beat Australia. And it took them until the fourth test when the series was gone, no pressure to do it, which is all frustrating for England fans. Where was this the first 3 test matches of the series? Has come too little too late. But in the first innings, they were bowled out for 110. They were 4 for 16 at one stage. It could have been a lot worse than that, but they were able to recover to 9 for 91 and then 110, mainly through Harry Brooks' innings. And then obviously Gus Atkinson batted with the tail and did what he did there to get them up to that score of 110. And then in the second innings, they did well to chase 175. 6 wickets down. Australia didn't have enough runs, as we've discussed. If it was 200 plus, maybe a bit difficult. But it wasn't convincing. You know, they were throwing the bat and it looked ugly. And, you know, they sort of played Bazball and they sort of did all that aggressive type stuff as they've done for the last few years. But it was mainly Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett that opening partnerships set the tone. And the rest of the batters were able to feed off that. You know, when you get a 50-run partnership for the first wicket, it only takes one or two good partnerships to chase down a score of 170 odd, and that's what happened. And the rest of the batters were able to get the job done. So that was pretty much the batting side of things. The bowling side of things, for the first time this series, they bowled pretty well. They pitched the ball up, and they were able to take wickets, mainly through the bowling of Josh Tongue in the first innings. Did well to take his 5 wickets, and obviously England bowled Australia out for 152, which was a good result. Could have been a lot less than that. But anyway, nonetheless, still a good result. And then in the second innings, they did well to bowl Australia out for 132, therefore chasing 175. You have to say Josh Tongue was the standout. A lot of people said, why didn't you play earlier in the series? Gus Atkinson bowled well until he got injured with a hamstring and he's ruled out of the series. Ryden Carr still had his problems in this test match. Ben Stokes, well, he bowled well, as you expect from him. And obviously Will Jacks didn't bowl because spin wasn't required on this type of surface. So Jihan, your overriding thoughts on England's performance with bat and ball, how would you assess their performance in this test match? Because for the first time this series, they actually sort of played some good cricket. I wouldn't say it was clinical, but they played some good cricket in parts to get the victory in the end.
Well, the bowling was definitely a lot better than what they've served up in the previous test matches. Josh Tongue was brilliant. Just kept bowling a full length, and let the pitch do the rest for him. And Steve Smith has said it's difficult to line him up because you're not sure if the ball's going to come in or go away with that angle he sort of delivers at. He's got decent pace as well, so I think he bowled really well. Ryden Carr, he did bowl some rubbish, but he improved a lot, particularly in the second innings. And he's still the leading wicket taker for England as well, which, yeah, I thought.
Yes, which is a bit surprising given what he's served up in this series. But I suppose the Travis Head ball on the second innings was a good delivery. In the second innings was a good ball. So he bowled well in parts, but obviously
he definitely bowled
suited to the type of role that he's been given.
Well, he definitely bowled fuller towards the end of that second innings. And was rewarded for that. And Gus Atkinson was good as well. I mean, he looked in Brisbane. He just looked like he lacked any kind of penetration to get wickets, but he was better here. Obviously, he went off injured, and that was another point in the game where Australia really could have taken advantage of that, but they ended up collapsing not long after that. But the bowling was overall really good. Stokes has taken 3 there as well. Batting, first innings, I thought it was mostly good balls and the pitch doing a lot that got them out. If you get Zach Crawley edging to third slip, that's a really good ball. I don't think you can't blame that on the pitch. It's a pretty good ball. It's a typical Australian pitch type dismissal, angling across the left-hander, pace and bounce, getting caught at third slip. So that was a good ball. Ben Duckett, you can probably blame the pitch for that one, going down the leg side. Ball held up in the wicket, probably seamed a fair bit as well across back towards the offside. So, for him, that's a bit unlucky. Jacob Bethell got a good ball. That's always a good ball from around the wicket and moving away. Joe Root, he tried to get down the wicket to Nessa, but again, ball seaming away and him getting out in exactly the same way he keeps getting out. So that was, good ball, but exposing his technical issue there. Harry Brook got a ball that seamed in miles. I don't think there's much he could do about that. Ben Stokes played a poor shot. He just sort of hung the bat outside, went after a wide ball and got caught in the slips. That was a poor shot. Smith bowled through the gate, and again another ball that seamed a mile in. Jack's also got one that seamed and bounced a lot. So I don't think you could blame a lot of their dismissals on poor shots. Come the fourth innings, they went after the bowling. They took a lot of risks. Ben Duckett in particular, and he had a bit of luck, but it came off. And I thought that his lines sort of put the way he attacked Mitchell Stark put him off his lines a little bit. Stark sort of bowling a bit wide after that. And Jacob Bethell, similar. Bethell looked really, really good in that innings. And even Harry Brook in the first innings, his way of dealing with the pitch was to play baseball essentially, backing away. I think he hit Stark for 6 over cover. But he played okay before he got that ball with his name on it. He actually played pretty well and shifted the momentum away from Australia because they were 16 for 4, I think, at that point.
Yes.
And then, until Boland got those breakthroughs later on in the innings, the momentum was going towards England. So I think England's way of dealing with this is basically playing with the pitch, or doing this much, is basically playing T20 cricket, backing away to the offside, slogging through, smashing it through the offside, scoops, reverse scoops, Zach Crawley just pumping the ball down the ground for 6. So, but it actually came off for England, whereas for Australia they don't have that. They don't play that style of game, really, because most of their T20 players aren't in the test side. That's just not the game they play. I think for Australia it's more of a shot selection issue and not knowing how to keep the scoreboard ticking. Whereas, for England, they especially in the second innings, they played their baseball game and with the wicket flattening out, knowing the total they had to score, which was not by any means too high a total, it came off for them. And the other thing is that they also know that when you're playing like that, when you've got batting down to 8, 9, even Atkinson, Cask can score runs, they can just keep taking risks up to a point. But it came off for them. And I think they got up to 50 for no wicket maybe. And they were going at 6, 7 runs and over. And Ian Higgins off the Great Cricketer said, Zach Crawley's just suddenly started middling everything. And that's at that point, and that's when you think everyone's complaining about the pitch, but it's not affecting them there. But I think it definitely by that point it was getting easier.
Yeah.
Which is the frustrating thing, because if Australia batted time, it was going to get easier. But every time they got a partnership going, they found a way to get out.
Yeah, it was that type of wicket, really, and that's what happens. You never felt like you were in on both sides, and that's what happened for Australia, and that's what happened to England to an extent, really. But they played okay for the first time in this series, but too little, too late, and that's the frustration, really, from this England side. So at least they got something out of this tour, regardless of what happens in Sydney. At least they got something. They got a victory, but it doesn't help ease the pain of losing the Ashes. So still, a lot of questions will be asked after the series is concluded. So it doesn't really make sure that Ben Stokes and McCullum keep their jobs, because they will be heavily scrutinized at the end of the series, regardless of what happens in Sydney. But I suppose they avoided the whitewash, which was on the cards from everyone after that test in Adelaide, given the way that England lost. But credit where it's due, they stuck it out. It wasn't pretty to watch, but they were able to get the job done to an extent. So hopefully for them, they can continue on the momentum going into Sydney. But you have to say, I suppose they broke the drought since 2010-11. I suppose that's a good thing, I suppose. But too little, too late, and not wrapping up the Ashes. And many England fans will be saying, where was this in the first 3 test matches? Because if they played like this in the first 3 test matches, who knows? The series could have gone a different way, but that wasn't the case. So that's pretty much England, Jihan, in terms of their performance. Let's talk about the 5th Ashes test and preview that from the SCG, which is coming up. Always the last test match of an Ashes series in Australia to welcome in the new year. So before we talk about that, let's have a look at the stats between Australia and England and test matches here at the SCG. So the first test was back in 1882, 57 matches, 8 draws. Australia have won 27, England have won 22. Now then, both teams will be making some changes, at least 1 or 2 changes. For Australia, let's talk about them first, Jihan. There's been a bit of spotlight on Cameron Green and whether or not Bo Webster will come in and take his spot. Also, Todd Murphy, maybe for Jai Richardson, depends on how the pitches and conditions, whether or not Australia will go in with a spinner. And we now know that Usman Khawaja will be playing for certain because he's announced his retirement. So not a bad way for Usman Khawaja to finish his career, where it all started in 2010-11 in that Ashes series against England. He'll be finishing up against England all these years later. So we now know he will be locked in for this last test match. So your thoughts on the team, Jihan, in terms of selections? Do you think they're going to go with Todd Murphy for Jai Richardson? Do you think Cameron Green's going to get the boot? Your thoughts on how Australia will approach their selection for this 5th and final test of this Ashes series?
I actually thought that Todd Murphy will come in for Michael Nessa and Richardson would play. I heard him being interviewed at the end of the MCG match, and he said he's recovered and he'll be fit to play in the SCG if he's selected. So, well,
I suppose he didn't bowl many overs. He bowled a bit more in the second innings, but the workloads were massive, and obviously 2 days you don't have a lot of overs to bowl. So
no, that's true. But I guess he is coming back from a pretty significant injury. But he's still not up to top pace. But I still thought that he looked threatening, and he got Joe Root out with a really good ball in the 4th innings. So I would give him one more go. I would play Todd Murphy because I imagine the pitch is going to be quite dry. I think I heard Mark Waugh on commentary say it hasn't rained for a month in Sydney up until this week coming up. So I reckon the pitch is going to be quite dry. So I think Murphy will play. I would give Cameron Green another go, but I wouldn't bat him at number 7. I think that's. I don't understand the point of him being at number 7 because he's not bowling a hell of a lot of overs either. So to me, at the moment, he's more of a partnership breaker type bowler, as opposed to he's not bowling as many overs as Stokes, for example. So he's not one of the frontline bowlers.
He's also been managed. He's coming back from his back injury, and obviously his workloads are being managed.
Yes,
as he comes back from that. So,
I think he's in the side primarily as a frontline batsman. And if you're picking someone for to be a top order batsman, then I wouldn't bat them at number 7 because that doesn't make any sense to me. And also,
I suppose they just wanted to change it up for Melbourne, give him another role, but that's the problem, isn't it? He's batted so much up and down the order; it's scrambling his mind, to be honest.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, what sort of message does that send to him? We're picking you as this bits and pieces player as opposed to our batting all-rounder.
Well, where's he batted? He's batted at 3. He's batted at 4. He's batted at 5, I think. He's batted at 6. Now he's batting at 7. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just bat him at 6. Just bat him at 6. Khawaja's going to bat at 5. One batsman I thought they could possibly get in as Renshaw for Weatherall, but I think now that you may as well play Weatherall for the whole series and see if you can do anything in Sydney. Give him that five match run. So I think my team would be Head, Weatherall, Labuschagne, Smith, Khawaja, Green, Carey, Stark, Murphy, Richardson, and Boland.
Yep. We shall see what the selectors do ahead of this 5th test for Australia. Now, for England, I think we pretty much know who's going to come in. Matthew Potts will probably come in for Atkinson because he's out with a hamstring injury. And they probably won't make too many changes apart from that, to be honest. Do you agree with that, Jihan? Do you think they're just going to swap in Potts for Atkinson? There's been talk about Shoaib Bashir, but as we've seen throughout the whole series, England don't want to pick him. They don't have the confidence, and they might as well stick with Will Jacks as the extra batter who can bowl a bit of part-time spin, as we've seen in this series. Didn't quite work out in Adelaide, but there's probably no point in picking Bashir now, really, isn't there, Jihan, after they haven't picked him throughout the whole series?
Well, ironically, I think England's team's more settled than Australia's, even though they're 3-1 down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think so Potts in for Atkinson. Yeah, the only change I may possibly make is getting Bashir in for Will Jacks, because I don't really see the role in the side for Will Jacks. This pitch is probably going to take some turn towards the end of the game, and I think if England is serious about trying to win the game as opposed to saving face and not losing too badly, if you know what I mean, I would just play Bashir, because the other thing is if they play Bashir, that's going to lengthen their tail, and that's something they'll probably worry about. So I think the attacking option would be to play Bashir, but they probably won't.
Yeah, they probably won't, given what's happened throughout the series thus far with him. Now, all eyes will be on the pitch, Jihan. Last year's test match against India was lively. That only lasted 3 days, and Australia were able to chase down a target in the last innings. And Bo Webster on debut did well with Travis Head in that partnership there. So that was a bit of a lively pitch in terms because of the amount of grass was left on it. So all eyes are on the pitch here in Sydney because of what happened in Melbourne. We don't want another 2-day test. That's bad for business, bad for Cricket Australia, bad for everyone, and bad for cricket fans as well because we want to see a lot more cricket. what do you think we're going to expect from a surface? A typical SCG surface, Jihan, or similar to what happened last summer against India? Or do you think they're going to go completely 180 and produce an absolute flat one?
I think it's going to be more towards the traditional SCG type of wicket. The groundsman has said that they've left 6 millimeters of grass on, which is less than what they had last year, I think. And I think there's a bit of rain in the first 2 days, but the weather's set pretty fair for days 3 to 5. It's going to be warm. It's going to be hot. So yeah, I think probably I reckon it's going to probably do a little bit on the first day for the fast bowlers. Then it will pretty much settle into quite a flat wicket, maybe similar to the Adelaide one this series, and then towards the end it will start taking some turn. That's what I imagine is going to happen.
Well,
it'll be a good toss to win.
Yes, it will be. But also all eyes will be on it as well, given what happened in Melbourne. Pressure on the curator in Sydney. But let's hope we get a reasonable amount of Test cricket to win this Ashes series. And it's a bit of a sad way, I suppose, Jihan, because it's the end of the Ashes and another Ashes series done and dusted. And no more Test cricket for a while for Australia and for England as well, which is a shame for both set of fans. But let's hope this last test of this Ashes series can provide us with some entertainment after what has been a pretty much one-sided series, given the way Australia have played in this series and the way that England have played. Let's hope we have a contest in this last test match of this Ashes series. Now then, some final thoughts before we wrap up a review of this fourth Ashes test between Australia and England. Jihan, what are your final thoughts from this Boxing Day test in Melbourne that only went for 2 days? What are your final thoughts from this test match?
Yeah, definitely was a very poor pitch, not fit for test match cricket, I don't think. Just way too difficult, too much seam movement. It was a good toss for England to win. I thought Australia's batting in both innings was very poor. England bowled a lot better than they have done in the series to date. I think they were starting to get better towards the end of Adelaide, and they've continued that on here. And then England, with a relatively low total to chase in the fourth innings, as the pitch was getting better, I thought they played that completely right, and I thought they batted really well. So Australia were poor in this match, particularly with the bat, but I thought England deserved the victory. They outplayed Australia with both bat and ball.
That's kind of you, Jihan. That's kind of you, despite your hatred and spitefulness for England. That's very kind of you to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, just looking at what happened, to be honest. Like I never,
I agree with you. They did well in the circumstances, and Australia weren't at their best. So at least they deserve something from this tour. It has been pretty difficult for them.
What I don't want Australia to do is just blame this on the pitch and blame it on the fact that they were 3-0 up and just become complacent because of that and say, oh, this doesn't really count. Because they were outplayed, and they need to look at that and see how they can turn things around in Sydney. Yeah,
definitely. Some of my final thoughts before we wrap up from this fourth test in Melbourne of this Ashes series. It was disappointing. That was only a 2-day test, the second 2-day test in this series. Disappointing not to have more cricket, but that's just the way it goes with these things that happen. The pitch has come into spotlight, rightly so. I thought the unsatisfactory rating is probably the right one. It was a bit too much in favour of the bowlers, but we can't blame it entirely on the pitch. It was a bit of the batting as well from both sides in terms of modern day techniques and all that. with some good bowling mixed in there as well. So it was a factor of all three, really. The batting from both sides, the pitch, and some good bowling contributed to how this game panned out in the end. Probably both teams made the pitch look bad than it was in terms of how they played on it with the batting side of things. Apart from that, Australia weren't at their best. England did well. I don't think they played at 100%, but they played to their level, and they were able to get the win in terms of battling through tough conditions. They were able to do something on this tour. But to be honest, it was too little too late. And really, will people remember this win from England in the years to come? Not really, because the series was done, the Ashes were wrapped up, and this test match ended in 2 days. I think people will talk about the pitch rather than the performance from England in the years to come. That's just the way I see it. But yeah, frustrating for the England fans, but this England side's been frustrating throughout this series. So they've only got themselves to blame. But I suppose for Joe Root, Ben Stokes, all those senior players, I suppose they've got to win in Australia, which is something ticked off their CV. But they won't be coming home with the Ashes, unfortunately. So those are some of my final thoughts from this fourth Ashes test here in Melbourne. Thanks, everyone, for listening to our review of the fourth Ashes test between Australia and England. If you're watching or listening to this episode of the podcast on our YouTube channel, let us know your thoughts on this fourth Ashes test between Australia and England in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say. The Dibbly Dobbly Podcast has you covered for this Ashes series. Be sure to subscribe to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast YouTube channel and click the bell so you don't miss out on any episodes from this Ashes series. Also, like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Thanks, Jihan, for joining me today to review this fourth Ashes test between Australia and England with me. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.